Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, or our channel. This is going to be uploaded on two different channels. The Three Sisters Creative channel with myself and my sisters, and my channel, Everyday Artist Eve. And this is a tutorial video showing you how I make these project bags. I also make a smaller little notions pouch to go with it using the same fabrics, and but I won't be including that in this video. And what you will need is half a yard or so of each of two different fabrics. I like to choose fabrics that don't necessarily match but go together. So even though this has a pattern, it's a bigger pattern, and so I think that it's not as busy together. But you can choose a plain fabric and a patterned fabric. And this particular bag has a patterned fabric with what is called a nap. That is that the fabric picture on the pictures on the fabric, the pattern, only go one direction. For instance, these bunnies are all, this is the top, because the bunnies are all, even though they're just kind of going like this, all their heads, all their ears are going up. So be careful if you don't want to have to, pay attention to that, to pick a fabric that isn't like that. But I do talk later on about what to do if you have a nap on your fabric. And you will need slightly less than half a yard for this. And if you were making a notions pouch too, you would need slightly more than half a yard for the other one. But basically half a yard. Sorry, my dog is barking. And you will also need a surface to cut on. I have this cutting mat. You will need something to cut with. I use a rotary blade, but you can also use scissors. And remember, your bag is only as good as your cut. So if you don't have these items, don't rush out and buy them, but try to be as precise as possible. And of course, I also have a straight edge because I'm using a rotary tool. But if you use just regular scissors, just try to be as precise as possible for your cuts. You will also need an iron and a sewing machine. It only needs to do a straight stitch. And if you don't have a zipper foot, that's okay. Just use the regular foot. I normally don't use my zipper foot. Anyway, that's probably clear as mud. Let's get started.
Intro that I am going to be showing you how to make a project bag. And the first thing we do is we start with ironing our fabric, because in order to make a good bag, you have to have a good cut. And you see that there's lots of creases and lines and stuff. So I'm going to press this, and then we'll get started. Here we are. Now there's a little crease here and all that. This is a yard, but you don't need a whole yard. And also, I like to have a coordinating fabric to go with my bags. Now, this one has a nap. All these bunnies, in order to be right side up, the fabric has to be going this way. So be sure when you pick your fabrics, you know whether or not they have a nap, so you can orient your fabric correctly. Now, I'm going to also talk a little bit about I'm holding the tablet, so I'm sorry if it's jiggling. You see sometimes here, it's not cut necessarily with both sides. being straight. And here you have the selvage edge. You don't want any of that in your bag, so you're going to be cutting that off on both of these. Also, if it doesn't show on the front, often there are little pinprick looking things. You know, that's where the machine grabbed the fabric to pull it through. That's part of the selvage, so you need to try to cut that off, or at least if you're running out of space, stick it in the seam allowance, but don't let that show on your bag. And this one with the nap, I went ahead and ironed it where I couldn't get the seam completely out because I wasn't going to be trying to do that, this fold. But I need to make sure when I cut that I have all of my edges straight, so I need to make sure I measure out correctly. And if it's not straight, if it's looking like this, now this is folded weird, but if it's looking like that, you're going to do a first cut to make that straight. Now, I'm going to go get my tripod so that I'm not doing this to y'all. All right. Okay, so this is ironed, and I have over here the selvage edge together. I got it where these are together and they're not separated by any great distance, although it keeps wanting to go back to the way it was on the bolt, which was very different. So just bear with me here while I fix my fabric. And I'm just using my fingernails under here to grab the bottom one to pull it closer to me. And it's worth it to take the time to get this exactly right, to make sure that your grains go correctly and that your cutting is correct. Okay, so this is what I'm going to use for what I call the main portion of my bag. I do have the one you saw with the little bunnies. That's what I put on the bottom and on the inside. And if you'll see here, it's very crooked. Let's see if you can see my fingers. The bottom one is further out than the top one. I'm going to have to bring that further so that over here so that I can cut it. So I want this 14 inches wide this way because the bunnies are going up and down. And I want it 12 inches deep. So I am using a cutting mat and a rotary cutter. However, if you don't have these things, measure correctly and use your scissors. You don't need this, just helpful. And I'm also going to use the straight edge that came with my I had a set of this cutting board and the rotary tool. It wasn't this cutting board, it was a smaller one. And this straight edge. So the first thing I'm going to do is, and you should, I'm lining up, let me move this back just a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about, and you still can't. I am not a good cinematographer. I am so sorry. I'm gonna pause for a minute. Okay. So now I hope you can see. So here's the bottom part of the mat and the numbers. But before I start counting and all that other stuff, I'm going to line up my fabric with the fold, which was not the fold that came from the store. It's the fold I made when I ironed it out and refolded the fabric. And I'm going to cut off this uneven edge, but I have to make sure everything's lined up. And I'm going to line up my straight edge on the 17, and look how crooked it is. And often when you get stuff from the store, it's crooked. So ask for just a little bit more than what you need, and go ahead and check it out and trim off what you need to trim off. Now, I'm going to have to pause while I cut this because the camera is in the way of my getting a good cut. But you're going to place your hand, open your blade, place your hand, and push very firmly so that this doesn't move. And you're going to stand up and make sure you get a very nice cut. It's easier to do it correctly once than to try to hack away at it. But don't move your straight edge until you're sure this is cut. And if you're cutting with scissors, make sure that you're keeping, you could even use a straight edge to mark where you want to cut the fabric because you're going to cut it off. But as I said, I'm going to pause this so that I can move the tablet and cut this, and then I'll be back with you guys. Okay, I'm thinking I got it where I can do it on the camera here, maybe. All right, and this is how much was cut off. And as I said, it's going to be 14 inches wide and 12 inches deep. So I'm going to move this over here. And I'm going to count on the bottom here. And I know you can't see what I'm counting, but I'm counting these numbers down here. Oh, look at that. I have it at the 24 over here. I did that by accident. So I'm going to put my straight edge here on the 12. And yes, there's a lot of extra fabric, but don't worry about that. It doesn't look like very much because I had a whole yard to start with, but that's because I plan to make another bag. So I use about half a yard on each bag that I make, half a yard of each color. Now I'm turning it the other way, and I am going to, I have the fold on my, I have the fold over here on my left, and I'm going to line it up with the bottom of it here, and I'm going to cut off my selvage edge. And I'm going to probably take a little bit more than that too, but I'm going to try not to get too wild with that because I hate wasting fabric. But I want to make sure I get all those little dots off and everything. So, and I'm going to double check that I'm straight, and I am. No, I'm not. Okay. And as I said, stand up, put your body weight over it, and push hard. If you can't do that, there are ways to get around it, but that's the best way. So now I'm going to put the fabric back over here on the 24. And I need to have 14 inches this way. So that would be at the 10, right? And I'm supposing that's right, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to count to make sure. Because once I cut it, you know, I can't put it back together. Well, I could, but that wouldn't look pretty. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Awesome. Okay. I usually close my blade while I'm not using it, so I forgot it was closed and I had to open it again. So safety first, right? All right. So I am going to be using this to make a matching notions pouch. So I'm not getting rid of this. And there's the outer top portion of my bag. Now, I have to put the other fabric down for my inside, my handles, the bottom. So this uses a lot more fabric. Still, I try to keep it within half a yard. Sometimes it goes a little bit out of half a yard. So those of you that have, see how it's uneven here? So I'm going to have to trim this on the edge. Those of you who have trouble standing for any length of time, what you can do is, if this is folded well and ironed good, oh my gosh, ironed well, you can fold it like this. And I have, on days when my back is really, I fell out of a van, I have back issues. On days when my back is really bothering me, I've cut it from a sitting position like this, because I don't have to go so far. But you have to have it where you can put your shoulder muscle into it to get a nice straight cut. Now, I'm gonna make this straight. I don't think I need to take off quite that much. So I'm just gonna oh, I'm so sorry, I jerked you. I am not used to making tutorials, and I'm doing this by myself, so you know, I don't have a fancy setup or anything where it's easy for me to get this up where you guys can see it. There. Now, I'm going to cut the, I have to look it up every time. I look it up every time to make sure that I am, on this bag, because I make a couple of different bags, that I am cutting it the right size. Okay? So, I am going to cut, I am going to open this fabric up so that I can make sure I'm cutting it correctly. I just wanted to show you how you could do it differently. I don't recommend doing that when you've got, if you're not, haven't done it a lot, if you're not familiar with naps and making sure and all that stuff. But, so, because of the lining fabric, I make a lot more. I need to make sure that, I make a lot more cuts with it. I need to make sure that they fit properly with the orientation of the fabric that I'm doing. So I have made myself little, what I want to call cheat sheets. I have not cut off the selvage of this one yet. I will. But, this one,
I'm orienting it the same way so that the grain goes the same way here. And I also need to make sure that I make cut out for the handles. I put handles on all my bags, and for the bottom part of the other bag. This is a different size. So I need to make sure that everything is going to fit the way I want it to. Now, the handles are basically the same size as this. So I can get 2 handles, and I only need the one of the bottom thing because it curves on the bottom. I am sorry, I'm really bad at this. So this is going to be good. This way is good. I'm going to cut this off after I've made this cut. So this one is going to be 15 inches. 15 inches from this first cut this way. And I line up the selvage edge on the on this line, and then count down 15 inches. I'm going to move this just a little bit more over here because I want room to cut where you might actually see what's going on. So and I always count. It's not that I don't know math. I just, because I'm moving things around and don't always cut it in the same spot, I want to make sure it's right. And I need 2 of these just like I needed 2 of the other ones. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yes. You see how it didn't come apart there? So you don't move your straight edge until you know you have a good cut. Okay, I'm putting this aside. And now I'm going to cut the selvage from this side here. And I don't cut this way or this way. I always turn my fabric so that I can cut in a way that I'm not going to cut myself, and that I could get proper leverage on my fabric. So I will need as much of this fabric as I can get, so I need to make sure I'm not cutting off anything that I don't have to. And I'm putting it on the half here, there, and over there. The half is real easy to see because it's the dots. And, okay. And then I double check that I made sure that I double check that I cut the selvage off, and I have. So now I'm going to cut 14 inches, I believe. Yes. Oh, I jerked you again. I'm sorry about the way the sunlight is coming in. There's not a lot I can do about it. It was a cloudy day when I started. Now it is not. So now I'm cutting the width of the bag. This is the height. So I need 14 inches. I'm moving this over to the 24. $14 inches this way should be what? I thought it was 10. I just wanted to make sure. Numbers and I aren't friends, but I'm moving the whole fabric instead of just this. So I'm double checking before I cut that everything is where I want it. Okay, so now there's a fold here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this fabric and iron that fold out. Okay, so this is the interfacing on the handle, and you just put it on one side. Then you fold it in half. If you bend the interfacing, that's okay. It's not going to matter. Okay. I mean, you want it to only be on one side, but that's okay. Now, I cannot iron properly around the video, so I may have to turn it back off. But then you iron flat. Now, if you have a pressing cloth, you may want to use it anytime you're working with interfacing, because you don't want to get any of that goo on your iron. Now that it's half, go ahead and put it aside to let it cool a little bit before you work with it again. And I haven't put the interfacing yet on. This because I wanted to show you how I do it. So the sticky side, if you don't know, the sticky side of the interfacing has these little bumps as opposed to this side, which is more smooth. The little bumps go to the wrong side of the fabric. The pretty side of the fabric goes down. So, like this. However, I hate ironing on the interfacing. It wrinkles, it does all kinds of horrible things. So sometimes I press it just like one little iron press so that it doesn't slide around. But if it's not too big or too intricate or whatever, I just turn it over. Now you need to make sure that it is smaller than your piece so that you don't get the goo on your iron. And I noticed that that's blurry. I noticed that on this corner there's interfacing sticking out, but I want to make sure that corner is ironed down correctly. So I'm going to get my pressing cloth. Now I just picked this up at Hobby Lobby. It didn't cost very much. And I like this one because I can see through it. And I can press right over where that is and not worry about getting it on my iron. So just make sure that all of your pieces that need interfacing have the interfacing on them. Again, it's just the outside of the bag, and it's for stability. If you don't have any interfacing, you can make it without, but you know, if you have it, use it, or if you can buy it, get it. And lightweight interfacing, you don't want anything too thick. Just, you know, not the craft one that's really thick. It should bend and be supple. I will meet you at the sewing machine. Oh, no. I was in the middle of telling you about these handles. So it's nice and cool now, so I can handle it. And you want to fold in about this much on each handle I don't know how much that is. That's just how much I fold in. If you fold it all the way to here, that's fine. Your handle will just be skinnier. All right, so I just fold in this much and I iron along there. I'm gonna see if I can do that with this thing in the way. Ow! Sorry, because I'm in close quarters here, I just steamed my hand. There, see? Like that, and then flip it over. And you want this to be the same, so I just do this, and I just tuck it in. And see how it's making like a little edge there? That's okay. You're gonna be fine. Don't, even though I sell these, I don't get too bent out of shape about things that I can iron out or are not that big of a deal, because I'm not a machine, and if people wanted machine-made products, they would buy machine-made products. You know, I do my best. I try to make sure that I have quality, but ultimately, you know. So then you iron it flat, and so those are in there. That's to put all the raw edges inside. It's easier than trying to turn it, and I like the width, so that if you put this over your arm or something, it's not going to hurt if it gets full of stuff, because my bags are big and roomy, so you can put lots of projects in there, so they can get a little heavy sometimes. So I'll meet you back at the sewing machine. Okay, so here we are at my sewing machine. I'm sorry about the view, but I need to be able to operate things. So I threaded it with some teal thread to try to match the color. This is the only top stitching I do, is on top of the handles. And I don't top stitch both sides. Wait, let me see, where is the camera? I don't top stitch both sides. I just top stitch the open side, but you could certainly top stitch this side too if you want that aesthetic. I did not have teal, where is the camera? I did not have teal zippers. One of these is for the little one that I'm not going to show you today. I only had this lilac purple, but I thought it would look fine with what we're doing, so I'm going to be using that in just a little bit. So on the open side, sorry, I'm not used to making this type of video. On the open side of the handle, you stick that under your presser foot, and I do something in between a 1/4 of an inch and, I don't know, I line it up with my presser foot right here. I don't know what that distance is. It's about a 1/4 of an inch, but maybe it's less. And I top stitch. Now it's not necessary to go all the way to the end, because that's going to be inside the bag. But I do back stitch because I don't want it coming out. And mine just has a little button to back stitch. I don't know how yours back stitches, but it's easier to back stitch than to, you know, deal with stuff that didn't stay sewn. So, and if there's just a little edge, I don't know if you can see, where they're not lined up, like one is slightly smaller than the other, I just put that to the bottom on the bag, because it's never, ever, ever going to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect. And I made a wiggly top stitch because I'm talking. Oops. And again, I back stitch at the end of it. Right here is where I wiggled because I was talking. but I'm going to leave it. I don't like it. I might take it out later, but I doubt it. Okay. And then you do the second one. And hopefully I can get this back stitching done more correctly. Now, I am going to cut out pieces of this probably while of the video so that it doesn't last forever. But you need to remember to let your sewing machine pull the fabric through, not to try to push it, not to try to pull it from this side. Just let the sewing machine grab it and feed it through and just guide it. Because if you pull, your fabric distorts and you get all kinds of weird things like bubbles and strange things like that. So just let the sewing machine, and I don't pin this because I've ironed it within 1 inch of its life and it usually stays fine. So yeah, so try not to pull on that. And then my sewing machine, my measuring tape, I cut it not recently with something, so it's not, it's no longer intact. So the next thing I do is I get my background, my lining fabric, and I dropped one of my handles, and my outside fabric, and I put them right sides together. Oh, I'm sorry. So this this doesn't really have, sorry, this background one doesn't really have background. Why do I say background? This lining fabric doesn't really have a right up, this side goes up. So it doesn't matter which direction. I just dropped the other handle, but I'll go ahead and put this up here so you can see what I was going to talk about. So I am having to figure out which is the 14 and which is the 15 to make sure that I line this up correctly so that it meets on both sides. There you go, meets on both sides, and this is where my zipper is going to go. And my zipper I do pin in place, and I need to retrieve my handles because I need them, and I will be right back. I've adjusted the camera a little bit so that maybe you can see what I'm doing when I'm pinning. I'm going to move this stuff out of the way. I need to put my handles, I put them 4 inches from the edge. Can you see? No. I use this. I can't tell what I'm pointing at. So I hope you can see what I'm saying. So I'm going to use this to line up 4 inches from the edge. And I always put them to my outside fabric. And so this is 4 inches in, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to put a pin there. And of course I didn't open my pins, I just retrieved them. I've never made one of these with sewing and all that, so I don't know what I'm doing. Excuse me. So while I was opening that, this moved, and I want it to be 4 inches. So make sure it's 4 inches. I try to make sure that the edges meet up. And I put a pin here. And I have the seam toward the inside. And then I do the same thing on this side, 4 inches in, and a pin. And hopefully you can see what I'm doing. And then I make sure that this isn't twisted. Now, right here, I am going to sew, oops, ouch, let's not pinch myself. I'm going to do slightly less than what I normally sew. Put my needle down and take out the pin. I don't bother back stitching on this because I'm just tacking it in place so that when I'm getting the zipper pinned in, it doesn't slide around and it's where I want it to be. Inevitably, it's not where I want it to be anyway, but you know, I can always hope. There's been times that after I have the whole zipper in, they're not matching up from one side to the other, and I end up having to take things apart. I don't like taking things apart, but I don't like it being different. And I do measure it. I don't know why it does that. Okay, so my zipper is tacked in on this side. And I am not going to show you putting in the zipper on both sides, just one. And there's strings everywhere, and I take them off. Usually right away, but you can always take them off later, and a lot of them will be inside the bag. All right. So now the zipper, this is the outside of the bag, this bunny stuff. So you put the zipper face down, and my zipper is longer than this is a 14-inch zipper, but with the tapes, it's still longer than the bag. And I try to put it where this head is just a little past here. If I got longer zippers, I could maybe have it where I didn't have to mess with the zipper head at all. And I'm just going to take a pin and tack it right here. This is where I want my zipper, I think. And then over here. Now, if I leave this in this spot right here, I'm going to hit it with the machine when I try to do, I'm going to hit it with the machine when I try to do the seam going down here. This is not good. So I'm going to have to move this way, which means I'm going to have to repin over there. But it's easier to measure this out with just one side before I try to put the other side together. So I'm putting a pin here. And then go back and see how it bunches up here. That's because it doesn't meet again anymore. I'm going to pin it here. And now I'm going to take that off. And this zipper head is sorry, the zipper head is right on the edge of the fabric. So I would recommend getting a 15-inch zipper, but I have a whole bunch of 14-inch zippers, so until they are gone, I will have to adjust this. So you could switch to a zipper foot on your sewing machine. I usually don't bother, but I will, if my zipper foot is handy, I will switch it. Just so you can see, sorry, I have too many feet here. Okay, I have a zipper foot. I have the zipper pinned partially here. Now I need to, and I want to show you something. When I was cutting the selvage, remember I was trying to check? That's going to be in the seam allowance, but this must have been on the other side and I didn't see it. So that's why you need to double check, and I thought I had, but it'll be in the seam allowance. So I have, yeah, okay, so one side is 14 and one side is 15. So you have to make sure that the 14 side is what you've got a hold of. Then line up your edges and pin the heck out of that thing. Make sure that zipper stays right up on the edge, and that the three pieces are together. The three pieces are together on the edge. And pin, 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 pin. Because if the zipper slips, then you end up having to go and rip it out and do it again, and it's a hassle. So it's less of a hassle to put lots of pins. If you're not a pin putter and you want to do it without pins, or you can even use quilting clips, that'll work too. So and I'm sorry I'm out of camera, I know, but so this is one of the pins that I originally put in. I went ahead and put one next to it, and I can go ahead now and move it. And I don't move it until I've actually pinned next to it, just to try to make sure that I'm keeping everything where it was before. I'm sorry I'm out of camera, but I'm trying to keep it right there. I remember when I was in junior high, I was in a speech class, and one of the students was showing how to sew something. And so she was demonstrating everything, but she was putting pins in her mouth. And I'm going to go ahead and move this zipper further back here. Anyway, she kept talking with pins in her mouth, and she did a pretty good demonstration. But she said, the speech teacher said, I'm giving you a lower grade, but only because it was difficult to understand you with pins in your mouth. Every time I stick a pin in my mouth, I think about that. Okay, so make sure that you never run your sewing machine over these metal bits because bad things happen. So I have my zipper foot and I have the needle to this side of the zipper foot because I want to get close to this zipper. And I try to keep this side of the zipper foot on the edge of the fabric. I don't know if you can, I have my hand in the way. I try to keep this end of the zipper foot on the fabric, and I have this over here. Now, your zipper foot probably looks different from mine, but I am doing that so that I run the seam very close to where the zipper is, but not on top of it. And I am going to stitch until I come close to where the zipper head is, and then I have to move the zipper head out of the way. And I do not backstitch on the zipper. I should, but I don't because many times you have to take out the stitches for one reason and another, and it is far easier to do that if you haven't backstitched. Okay, so I'm going to leave the zipper in place, the needle in place, lift up, and, ow, poking myself. I had to take out a pin. I'm trying to find the zipper head right here so that I can scoot it past the needle, and I'm going to close it. Now, I did have to take out a pin, so I'm going to have to make sure that I hold that very tight to where the pin had been. With zippers, I kind of hold the fabric taut from this side just to make sure the zipper doesn't curl and I can see all 3 layers. But afterward, you're going to have to double check that you caught the zipper fairly close to the same place on every stitch. It's not going to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. But you know that you don't have one section where the zipper isn't sewn in. I feel pretty good about this. It's usually the first half of the zipper is usually easier because the weight of the fabric is not as much. All right, so let's see how we did. There's a lot of fabric. Oh, that's from the other one. Okay. All right. There's your zipper seam right here. And the handle is on the outside and the zipper is right side up. Okay. So next we're going to sew on this side, but first I'm going to go to the iron and iron this flat this way so that it gets a nice crisp edge because I don't top stitch this. I used to try, but if I get the top stitch crooked, it just drives me bananas, so I don't do it. And I will meet you back here for the second half. Okay. second side. It's ironed all nice and crisp. This time I have pinned this to the same spot on the zipper where the other one is, because I want to make sure they're in the same spot. I've opened the zipper up to that pin. Now, it's important that you make sure this is right side up and that it's facing the same. Don't put it accidentally on this side, and don't ask me how I know. So go ahead and pin that in place. And like I said, a lot of pins is better so that it doesn't move. And you're going to start from this side again when you sew, so you're going to get to this very quickly. But don't take that pin out until you're like right on top of that, as you want that handle to stay right where it is. I'm going to actually pin the handle again over here. Right here, just to make sure it stays, because when the zipper's open, it's harder to get the fabrics to line up right. Now, I can't see what I'm doing, but I can feel it. You can feel this ridge here. I should have cut this off so that I could see easier, but oh well. Now, I don't have the other side on, so I haven't pinned all the way over. Then make sure that you have the 14 side, not the 15 side. Line it up with the one here. Make sure it lines up with this one here. That it's not too long. That way you know you have the correct side. And then you can start pinning on either side of this. Now I'm going to get this pinning done, and I'm going to get this pinning done. Make sure you line these up. Inside goes to inside, outside goes to outside. Okay? Okay. I have lots and lots and lots of pins. I would rather use way more pins than I need than have it slip. So I have pins in here holding the handle on, as well as this pin, which is just before the head of the zipper. But honestly, I'm probably just gonna sew to right here and push the zipper across. I don't have to go very far because the zipper head is like right there. Excuse me. So then I can, get over this little hump here. There's a lot of fabric right here where the handles are. You've got 2 layers of fabric for the one handle, 2 layers of fabric for the other handle, the zipper fabric, and 4 layers of bag fabric. So it's pretty thick right here. So don't be surprised. Now, only thing you need to make, you don't need a fancy sewing machine. You just need straight lines. You don't need zipper feet or anything like that. So anybody can do this. It's really easy. Well, putting in the zipper is challenging, but it's not difficult. Does that make sense? Anyway, so I'm lining up this zipper again the way I had on the other one. Hopefully it will be approximately the same distance away from the zipper as the previous one. so now I'm going to try to push this zipper head over there. But I need to take out the pin that is in the way. And I have to raise my, ouch! Too many pins. I have to raise my presser foot, and there it is. Okay? And then I need to make sure that all of my layers are lined up again to make sure that nothing has slipped below where it needs to be or above before I put my presser foot down again. And like I said, there's a lot of fabric where that handle is, so you need to keep those pins in there. Until you get right up on it, just to keep all that fabric where it belongs. Technically, you're not sewing through all of that fabric, but it's all here, this big lump. You're just sewing through the same amount that you did before. Now on my bags, the inside is slightly bigger than the outside because I want plenty of bag for whatever's inside. Okay, I'm coming up on that other handle here. Now I have a pin underneath that it's hard to see, so I need to make sure I grab it and get it out of the way and not sew over it. So I ran out of bobbin thread, and I'm gonna finish sewing this. I had to meet up where I ran out of thread, and I will show you how I finish it. All right. Zippers in, and then you unzip and zip just to make sure that everything works fine. You take it and get it a nice good press, and then remember this piece. Now we put this on. Now this one, you can go ahead if there's some interfacing sticking out. I don't know if you can see even what I'm pointing at. Right here. You can just take some scissors. Sorry about the jiggling. I left my scissors on the other side of the camera. You can just take some scissors and just take that off. Because from now on I don't pin, and you can just throw that away. It makes it easier to see. So this, remember, this doesn't have an up and a down, so it doesn't matter. You put it at the bottom right here. You can pin it if you want to. I forgot to, remember I said I needed to trim that smaller? So before we start, I'm going to trim this a little bit smaller. But I'm just going to use my scissors. Let me see what I'm doing. Yeah. And I'm just gonna very carefully make it the same size as the outside. It does not need to be perfect. This is going to go in the seam allowance. Okay? So, line that up. Make sure it lines up over here. Oh, I still have on my zipper foot. Now, while I will be willing to sew on a zipper without the zipper foot, and I often do, I will not be willing to sew regular seams with the zipper foot because the zipper foot doesn't have guidelines like this presser foot does. So again, back stitch, and I let the machine do the work of pulling, and I just keep this. I don't pull, I don't push, I just guide. The interfacing is a nice stabilizer, so you know it's not going to stretch or anything like that, but you will not get as many puckers and that kind of thing if you just let the feed dogs on the machine do the work. I'm sorry if my hands are in the way, but you know, I have to use them. So there's that. And now I am kind of obsessive about cutting all threads. So if I see any threads, I don't want any of them poking out. You take this and line it up with the other outside piece, not with the interfacing, with the actual fabric, if you have any interfacing sticking out. And you can pin this if you are uncomfortable. If you're uncomfortable not pinning it, then by all means pin it. It's just, it's pretty straight, and it'll hold together pretty well, and so I don't normally pin it. But I hold it at this end where I want it to go, and then just guide it. Now see how they're starting to separate here? Well, that's not going to work for me. And I just pull slightly underneath, and that brings it back into line where it's supposed to go. It looks like I'm pushing. I'm not. I'm just holding it. I'm holding it steady. Now, I'm going to do my final iron before I put it together. And what I'm going to do is iron these seams flat. And I iron them toward the top of the bag. And this side looks to me like it's a lot narrower. So I'm going to double check that all the seams are good. If not, I'll run another seam if I'm not comfortable. Okay, I ironed this, but they wanted to go down, so I let them go down. Fabric has its own way. So I try to pin right here in this seam. Don't worry about the interfacing being like that. I'm gonna fix it when I do the final press. I pin this seam so that it meets up with itself. If it's not perfect, that's okay. I just like it if they meet. And then on this side, the same thing. I guess I could iron one up and one down and they would nest, but I always iron them the same direction. I don't know why. And then open your zipper. Very important. Open it. It doesn't have to be open this far. You can open it, you can just partially open it. You don't have to open it completely. But if you do not open it, you will not be able to turn your bag. So open it. Sometimes if it's closed a little bit, it helps with the pinning. Then I'm trying to make sure I'm showing you. The zipper, make sure it's like this with the fabric part of the zipper going toward the inside of the bag. So, and I call this the lining. And then I put a pin right here on the corner. Now, you don't have to pin it all. I've certainly sewn it together where I didn't pin it, except at the zipper and the this little seams, but that's not too much more, right? Okay, so then make this one also, make sure it's going toward the lining part, not toward the top, and get that zipper flat, as flat as you can. All right, so I start here. Don't forget to take the pins out. Don't sew over them. And as I said, let the feed dogs do the work. Don't try to pull or force. This long thread is bothering me. So now, right now, while I'm seeing it, I go ahead and grab it. And these are just frayed edges. I do it all at the same time. This is a slightly wider seam than what I normally take on the other seams, because I want to make sure I don't hit the metal of the zipper. And I go slowly over the zipper in case it's there. And then I backtrack over the zipper. So, ouch. Poke myself with the other pin. So when I get to the corner here, I backtrack. And then I put the needle in and I pivot. And it doesn't matter where it is as long as it's the same on both sides. And then I backtrack again. And I skip. So I'm going to skip to way over here. Make sure it's about where it was on the other side. Go ahead and double backtrack because you need it to stay. And the reason I do it on the corners is so that it just toughens them up a little bit. Your bag is almost done. For some reason, I have more fabric on the top than on the bottom, and I am not going to worry too much about it. That's going to make this side slightly off. I'm not sure why, but we all do our best, right? Okay, so now that's almost done. What you're going to do is clip these corners like this. And you should probably look at the other side to make sure everything's okay before you clip the corners, but it seems fine to me. And you need to clip these corners too. I will in a minute, but then you take this and you're going through that zipper you kept open. And I go ahead and turn these corners while I'm doing this right now. And then pull it through. I should have left the zipper open more. It's a tiny little thing. And you're gonna go give it a final press. And when you're pressing it, you're going to press this in like this. I'll show you when I come back. Okay, and you go make sure you get all your corners turned and pointy, even though this one's going to end up being back the other way. And there's threads here because I don't cut the thread when I go from one side to another, and I just snip it right now. Okay, so go finish turning your bag. The handles are going to be in weird places. You're going to have to Make sure you get them all lined up, and get that final press on your bag, and I'll meet you. Okay, I've given it a press. It's nice and crisp. My corners are crisp. I'm going, and I wait and do this until then in case I find anything wrong. I'm going to clip my zipper, just the little tabs from the zipper, so that when I am ready, this will poke out and be, I'm sorry, I'm not even showing you. This will poke out there correctly. Do both sides, clip that zipper on both sides. And if you have a longer zipper, make sure that you get it all down to at least the seam allowance. Okay, and you did do a back stitch over the, so it, you know, you don't have to really worry about that zipper. Okay, so now you have lots of threads like me, and you make sure you clip those because they're unpleasant to try to get out later. And you should have it nice and ironed. Ugh. Cotton frays, okay? It just does. So just cut it off. All right. You should have your, this is the seam part. Holy moly. More threads. I'll clip those off in a minute. This is the seam part, and this is the hole. But you're going to go ahead and sew the whole thing. So it's all turned right side out. Everything's right side out. And you're going to sew over this. You don't have to back stitch or anything. Just sew right over it. And it's more like a top stitch, you know, than a seam. So a little bit thin. I didn't turn my corner right. It's too late now. All right. But that corner is inside the bag, so we're not going to cry about it. All right. And then your bag is done. You just tuck this inside. And zip your zipper closed. And you made a cute little project bag, right? Oops. So I'm going to give it another press. I'm going to have the, I'm going to have a pattern for this. I'll put the dimensions on this. So I will put in the description, I will put the dimensions that I used for this bag. But I will probably make a pattern and sell it if you would prefer to do that. So let me know in the comments if that's what you would prefer. All right, so thank you for listening to me. Happy stitching.